Alright guys, Chris Weidman lost last night. Luke Rockhold put a beating on the guy. I don't know, but Chris Weidman was being pretty cocky leading up to this fight. Now, I don't know if that really makes much difference in what the outcome would have been. It's like people say that, oh, should you be cocky and this and that. It's like, because sometimes that being cocky could just be the guy talking to kind of piss the other guy off. But I know one thing that that isn't good about being cocky is thinking that you can't lose. If you think you can't lose, then you're probably going to lose. Because these people are working very hard to come up, and they're watching videos of you and they know where you're at. You have to constantly try and get better and better and better at something, because these people are just climbing, they're nipping at your heels, at your toes, they're going to be right there. So he was served a big old piece of humble pie. Now, it could have just been talk, you know what I mean? It's like he maybe was taking Luke Rockhold very seriously, and if you're not as good, you're not as good. You're going to get beat. It's just there's nothing you can do. So so what's going to happen? I don't know, but let me tell you this: we now have, back in the day when Strikeforce was around, I liked Strikeforce more than the UFC. We now have all these Strikeforce guys are champions in the UFC. You got Robbie Lawler, 170-pound champion, Strikeforce fighter. You got Luke Rockhold, 185-pound champion. He was champion Strikeforce. Daniel Cormier, 205 champion, although he's not really the champion, because I still think John Jones is the champion. But still, Strikeforce fighter. Now Fabricio Verdun, Strikeforce fighter, heavyweight champion. All these Strikeforce guys. It's like, it doesn't really make any difference, but it's just kind of give you, it's just kind of, it doesn't matter now because there's no more Strikeforce and everybody's fighting in the UFC, and you guys could be better now than they were then. But, back in the day, like, Dana White was always kind of just running down Strikeforce, how they're not, well, those guys aren't good enough to be in. That's the minor leagues to the UFC, and it's funny because it's not true. I mean, all these guys were probably better back then than the guys that were in the UFC, because they're all not only in the UFC, they're champions, and they're dominating guys. So it's just a little bit interesting. It's one thing about having multiple organizations that they lead you to believe. Media can really, in money, because the UFC has more money and they're bigger, they're leading people to believe that certain people are better than other people, and it's just simply not true. That's one good thing about, because it was really cool when you had Pride and you had the UFC, but having one organization in a lot of ways is better, because we, at least for us maybe as fans, because we get to see who the best fighter is. Now, different organizations have different rules. Strikeforce has slightly different rules than the UFC as well. Not as drastic as like Pride, but we do get to see more who's the best fighter. I mean, back in the day, like Robbie Lawler's the 170-pound champ, but who knows? Back in the day, Robbie Lawler, he was losing fights in Strikeforce. But, if he had fought GSP, he probably would have knocked the guy out. There's a good chance Robbie Lawler would have knocked him out. And it's just funny because, like, back in the day, man, the people are like, oh, this is the best fighter. And, I don't really think that they were. I didn't think that they were then. And it's funny because I'm just kind of doing this, saying this as I was right and you were wrong. All these Strikeforce fighters are the champions now. No, the champs, they're just destroying guys, man. Robbie Lawler, now granted, Robbie Lawler is maybe a better fighter now, but is he better? Or is he just fighting different guys? You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm getting at? You know, we'll never know. But hey, I'm just saying, we now have Luke Rockhold, another Strikeforce fighter, champion in the UFC. I'll see you guys later.